back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
The UFC's chief operating officer, Mr. Lawrence Epstein, has told ESPN that competitive matchmaking is what we do. And I hear you, Mr. Epstein, and I'm going to let you finish and all, but first I need you to tell me, when is CM Punk getting back in the octagon? Because I've been hearing rumors about CM Punk versus Mike Jackson, or we heard rumors of CM Punk fighting late 2017 and it didn't happen. So I just need this CM Punk announcement before we get into this competitive matchmaking. Now, alright, jokes aside though, what the chief operating officer is saying is, there's a misnomer going around that the UFC is the ultimate fighting circus and not, the ultimate fighting championship. He's saying there's a lot of people that think that we put on fights just for money and for show, and it's not a competitive organization, or people are starting to feel that way, and that's not the case. This is actually what he had to say. He said, competitive matchmaking is one of the hallmarks of the UFC. Yeah, you might do a Mayweather-McGregor fight here or there, or something that like the fans are dying to see, but at the end of the day, competitive matchmaking is what we do, and I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say we've gotten away from that. In boxing, you've got to be 20-0 before you become somebody, and you haven't fought anybody, and that's not our model. Now, he's got a good point there. In boxing, there's a lot of people that you see that, oh, look, this guy's 33-1, and he's fighting Floyd Mayweather, who's 59-0, unless you count Conor McGregor. No, I'm just playing around, but there's a lot of undefeated boxers, and you gotta build your way up and fight a bunch of nobodies. Nobody really looks at a whole boxer's trajectory. You know what I'm saying? You're 20-0, but nobody knows about fucking 1 through 18, and you don't really see that in MMA. Usually the stars of MMA, Conor McGregor, he's already got 3 losses. Ronda Rousey, she's already got a loss. I mean, usually it's not even usually, you just don't have to be undefeated to become a big star in MMA. And even when you are undefeated, it doesn't mean you're going to be the biggest MMA star, because when you look at the biggest stars in MMA, George St. Pierre, he's lost before. Conor McGregor, he's lost before. Tyron Woodley, he's lost before. I mean, Daniel Cormier, he's lost. John Jones, all right, you guys get the fucking point. But it is what it is. He's got some good points here, and actually, I agree with everything he's saying. I do have a couple of points that I can understand where people might disagree, like CM Punk, for instance. CM Punk, now he said unless it's a fight that fans are dying to see, and that's why you can still argue. You can argue for CM Punk. You can argue for George St. Pierre skipping all of the middleweight contenders. You can argue for Dan Henderson skipping everybody and fighting Michael Bisping. You can argue for Cody Garbrandt skipping the top 5, skipping TJ Dillashaw and fighting Dominic Cruz for the title, if you're saying it's fights that the fans are dying to see. Because that's the case. A lot of those fights had to do with the fans, and even if it doesn't translate into pay-per-view buys, because you could say, well, if the fans wanted to see Dan Henderson fight Michael Bisping for the title, why didn't it translate into a million pay-per-view buys? Why was it still, why didn't it do great numbers? And you'd have a good point, but at the same time, it's still a rivalry, and there's still definitely people that wanted to see that fight, and there's other reasons. It can be, bringing in the older crowd that, you know what I'm saying, just the MMA fans from 5 years. There's a lot of different reasons, but you can't tell me that the fans don't want to see CM Punk in the octagon. Whether you're an MMA fan that wants to see him lose, or you're a WWE fan that wants to see him win, people want to see CM Punk. So that he's completely fine when he defends those. Now, the only thing that I would say that would kind of go against this is when I look at somebody like a Kamaru Usman, who can't find a ranked fighter to save his life. There's nobody that wants to fight him. Nobody will take the fight. So Kamaru Usman's left to fight unranked fighters like Emil Meek, and I love Emil Meek, and I think he has a bright future in MMA. I think the Kamaru Usman fight might dim that down a little bit, just because if he loses this fight, which people are expecting to happen, I mean, it's expected. He's going into how competitive is this? Or you look at a Chris Cyborg situation. She's fighting a lot of bantamweights. If competitive matchmaking is what you do here, it just seems like Chris Cyborg might have already fought a legit featherweight, or Amanda Nunes, whatever you want to say. You wouldn't see people getting sacrificed to Cyborg. That's not very competitive, if we all know. Or Demetrius Johnson when he's fighting Ray Borg instead of TJ Dillashaw. I mean, some of this stuff is up to the fighters. Just because the UFC thinks the most competitive fight for Demetrius Johnson would be TJ Dillashaw, they can't force TJ Dillashaw to take the fight. Just because the UFC, let me cancel that right now, just because the UFC feels like, you know, Kamaru Usman is one of the best welterweights in the world, they can't force other welterweights to fight Kamaru Usman. So with that being said, there's only so much the UFC can do. Competitive matchmaking is what you do, but there's only so much that you can do. Because Kamaru Usman, if it was up to the UFC or us MMA fans, what we want to see him versus a ranked opponent. But it is what it is. He's fighting Emil Meek, and he's on a 6-fight winning streak already. He's smoked everybody he's fought, not close, but he's still got to fight an unranked opponent. So that's the only scenario I could point to that this guy's not right about. Everything else, the fans either want to see or there's still rankings in order. So with that being said, it is what it is. I've said enough on this video. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.